Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. No, I'm never throwing this hat out.
It's the Special Air Service.
Not that I think any of you are saying that, but it's non-negotiable. Hey guys, love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below. That's usually what I say at the end of the video. My name's Connor. If you're new, I am from America, New England, Rhode Island. Reverse that. And I'm just talking. I just want to learn, okay? I've seen a lot of SAS videos, especially in the past few months, but not one from World War II, the channel World War II on the origins. So that's what we're doing. 90% of what I just said could have been easily inferable by you guys, but whatever. I'm in a weird mood.
The British SAS.
Sort of feel like a beer. It's kind of early. Well, it's 4:36.
The British SAS, the Special Air Service,
Seltzer
is
will
considered
do.
one of the top special forces in the world. Its history and origins, however, have been shrouded in mystery and legends for most of its existence, which is not surprising considering the nature of the unit. But today, we shall attempt to piece the jigsaw puzzle together and bring you the top secret story of the SAS's wartime origin.
Bunker buster, collecting sand from the beaches of Normandy, which is way more important than it sounds, all right? Super dangerous. You had to go in these really weird, like, submarines and then go out onto the beach to collect sand, to go back and study it to see what the situation is and if it'll be able to hold up the armor you're going to be putting on the beach.
I'm Indy Nidell. This is a World War II special episode about the origins of the SAS. From the mid-1920s, the British Army employed a think tank that studied guerrilla tactics and unconventional warfare. The focus was on the various insurgencies they encountered over the years throughout the British Empire, like the Boer Commandos in South Africa, the Pathans in northern India, and the Arab insurgents in Palestine. Additional studies were made on the Civil War in Russia, and then those civil wars in Spain and China when they developed, to discover if unconventional tactics could be beneficial in a future war on the European continent.
So is he just talking about, like, spies at this point?
Tactics could be beneficial in a future war on the European continent. Men like Peter Fleming, a Grenadier Guard reservist,
James Bond,
and brother of future James Bond novelist Ian Fleming, studied infiltration techniques. He advocated for the training of a small number of very carefully selected individuals in advanced sniping, sabotage, and ambush tactics. This background work means that by the late 1930s, as wars once more loom over Europe, British High Command has a sort of plan ready. And when the Soviet Union invades Finland on November 30th, 1939, Britain officially offers little more than moral support to the Finns, since officially sending aid would mean declaring war on the Soviet Union. Yet, behind closed doors, the War Office does consider sending out an undercover force. A memorandum goes out looking for Arctic warriors who can operate behind Soviet lines to sabotage their communications installations and other military assets. This is the top secret Special Reserve, nominally the 5th Battalion of the Scots Guards.
Hitler becoming chancellor in 1933 is one of the most if I could change one thing, okay? It's one of the most saddening things in history because the Nazi Party wouldn't have been born. And the major threat that was the Soviet Union, maybe like Germany would have been more, well, actually they were still really mad about World War I. It's one of the biggest travesties ever is Hitler becoming chancellor in 1933. Because then it made the Soviets look like our ally, which they were. But it's a freaking shame.
Quite a number of those men who volunteer for
Putting it lightly.
the 5th Battalion of the Scots Guards. Quite a number of those men who volunteer for that unit will later find their way into the Special Air Service, and among them is David Stirling. Stirling is a Scotsman through and through. He is a born warrior and adventurer who believes in intuition and calculated risk. Stirling has, in fact, been on the verge of attempting a trip up Mount Everest when war calls him back. As Sergeant Instructor, Stirling teaches Arctic survival and mountain climbing within the Special Reserve. But just as his unit is considered ready for the task assigned, in March 1940, the Finns and Soviets signed the Moscow Peace Treaty. So the War Office disbands the 5th Battalion without further consideration. However, as the Germans begin occupying the continent throughout 1940, the need for special forces becomes more pressing. Many of the lessons learned are put into the Special Operations Executive and the Commandos, about whom we already made an episode. As for David Stirling, by the end of May 1941, he finds himself in Egypt. He has joined Number 8 Commando and has been integrated into what is known as Lay Force. However, Lay Force operations against German forces at Rhodes, Bardia, and Crete have met with big losses and disappointing failure. Rumors of disbanding circulate.
Hey, Rhode Island.
Lay Force operations against German forces at Rhodes, Bardia.
That's where I'm from. It's a joke because it's spelt the same way, but never. Sorry.
And Crete have met with big losses and disappointing failure. Rumors of disbanding circulate, and many commando units are dormant. Looking over maps of North Africa, Stirling feels that this theater is ideal for raiding operations by special forces. The Western Desert is largely unpopulated and doesn't have defined road networks, so supply dumps, vehicle parks, and airfields are all pretty much in the open with only rudimentary defenses. If units can infiltrate such targets, they can do massive amounts of damage. Yet Stirling doubts this is the right place for the commandos. Commando battalions usually...
So it's a place that is crucial for your enemy because it's a little place where you can land in a place that is extremely uninhabitable and no one is anywhere, and so you don't need to defend it much, nor can you defend it much. And so easily being able to be undetectable, easily to destroy, big hit for the enemy. Understood.
Yet Stirling doubts this is the right place for the commandos. Commando battalions usually operate in parties of at least 200 men at a time. And on top of that, he thinks them way too static, noisy, and unwieldy to create shock and surprise. How much more effective would it be to drop maybe a dozen specially trained and equipped soldiers behind enemy lines using parachutes or gliders? Stirling watched the German parachute operation over Crete with great interest. The heavy German casualties had shown him that parachuting against organized opposition is inefficient, but the concept of sudden infiltration by air is solid. More and more, Stirling is intrigued by the idea of creating his own airborne unit. He envisions a force no stronger than 200 men that can be further broken down and organized into much smaller sub-units. Another man who has observed the German parachute action on Crete with great interest is John Jock Lewis. He moved from Australia to Great Britain and joined the Welsh Guards in 1939. Sent to North Africa as the Guards' weapon training officer in 1940, he quickly understands the possibilities of unconventional warfare within the desert. Like David Stirling, Lewis shares the conviction that the future of special operations is not with hundreds of commandos, but with a much smaller force of lightly armed raiding groups. Surprise and daring are in themselves multipliers of force. He envisions the creation of a unit inspired by the likes of Rogers Rangers of the 1750s, who excel in scouting and hit-and-run tactics.
Guerrilla warfare.
But while the commandos have focused on seaborne operations, the new special service would take on parachuting. Once dropped off close to their targets, they would operate during the night and plant their explosives on enemy aircraft and supplies. Afterwards, they could hide in the desert and be extracted by motor...
Question, guys. What is the minimum altitude that you can safely deploy a parachute and land? Because if you're trying to do a secret operation, then you're going to want to be in a slow falling, easily visible parachute for as little time as possible. And so I'm wondering, like at like 500 feet, 1,000 feet, like how far can you go to the ground quickly and then deploy your parachute without dying?
Vehicles from recon. Afterwards, they could hide in the desert and be extracted by motor vehicles from recon units like the Long Range Desert Group. His desire to begin airborne experiments is eventually sanctioned by General Archie Wavell, who himself they would operate during the night and plant their explosives on enemy aircraft and supplies. Afterwards, they could hide in the desert and be extracted by motor vehicles from recon units like the Long Range Desert Group. His desire to begin airborne experiments is eventually sanctioned by General Archie Wavell, who himself has been a strong advocate of airborne operations, and he personally authorizes the first trial jumps in May 1941. As Lewis begins gathering his small band of cutthroats from Lay Force and other formations, he meets Stirling in Cairo. He invites the former commando to join his parachute experiment, and the two of them immediately click. Both share a vision of a future special air service. The men borrow gliders from the Desert Air Force and begin their parachute experiments above Fuka and El Daba. Under the supervision of RAF officers, the men learn the dangerous art of parachuting. Both Lewis and Stirling are hard-pressed for time, as they want to take their new unit into Operation Battle Axe. However, during a 2,000-foot drop, Stirling's parachute is caught on the plane's tail. He survives, but badly injures his spine, sending him to the hospital. With the majority of the men suffering from small...
Whoa. Did he survive by staying attached to the plane until it landed, or was he eventually set loose and the parachute wasn't destroyed and he survived? You need to tell me that.
Or greater injuries from the experimental jumps. Wavell decides that the new special service is not yet ready for deployment. Once more, it is German success that keeps the Special Forces in the game. Operation Battle Axe fails, and Wavell is removed in favor of Claude Auchinleck. With the Egyptian border still under threat, Lay Force no longer available, and the Navy unable to provide for commando operations, Lewis and Stirling continue with their experiment. The story goes that Stirling, still on his crutches, hops straight into General Auchinleck's office to convince him of this plan. This is, of course, one of the many puzzle pieces that surround the almost mythological origin story of the SAS. Stories like this, and Stirling knocking out a taxi camel with a single punch over a fare dispute, should maybe be taken with a grain of salt. What we can say for sure is that
there's no way you're knocking out a camel with a punch from a human. Have you seen camels? They're large. I'm sure that like the strongest person in the world could punch a camel and it would feel like that. Have you look up a camel? I didn't think they were big. They are huge.
British High Command becomes increasingly persistent that Auchinleck find a way to tie down Axis manpower and supplies in North Africa. And the Luftwaffe begins deploying Messerschmitt 109F fighters in the desert, which are superior to the remaining RAF Gladiators and Hurricanes in use. This means that sabotaging airfields and oil dumps is not only...
So was there an advantage to biplanes in some scenarios over World War II single wing aircraft?
Cool means that sabotaging airfields and oil dumps is not only cool, but necessary. So Auchinleck officially sanctions the buildup of the L Detachment, which will eventually become the first SAS brigade. There are also many stories about the origins of the SAS name. Most likely, it was influenced by Auchinleck, who thinks news of a special parachute brigade in Egypt will tip the Germans off. The newly promoted Lieutenant Captain Stirling begins gathering a force of 6 officers and 60 men, organized into 5 units of 2 sections. These are the originals, the godfathers of the SAS, a wild assortment of former commandos, veterans, survivalists, and other specialists. Many are already legends within their...
I made a comparison to Navy SEALs, but you guys got mad at me. Or not mad, what am I, 5? You were stern in telling me it is not the same thing.
Survivalists and other specialists. Many are already legends within their units and took part in raids against Tobruk, the Italian coast, or the Greek islands. They are once more drilled in map reading, demolition of bridges and buildings, and night marches through the desert.
Guys, did the Italian campaigns and like the campaign up the Italian peninsula have any effect whatsoever on the end of the war? Like, did it draw enough Germans away from the Eastern and French English Channel coast defense to make a big difference? Or were the Soviets going to push from the east and the Americans, Canadians, and everyone else, British, going to succeed anyway, you know?
Live firing, demolition of bridges and buildings, and night marches through the...
With hindsight, I'm not saying it was useless. I did say that. I'm saying, did it have an effect?
Desert. Live firing exercises are done not only with Thompsons, Webley revolvers, and Bren guns, but also with a wide variety of German and Italian firearms. Additional equipment such as high boots, knee pads, jock straps, crash helmets, and, of course, parachutes is requisitioned from RAF stocks. At the end of October, the German and Italian firearms. Additional equipment such as high boots undertake their fighting from RAF stocks. At the end of October, the SAS undertake...
Guys, I need a really big one of... I'm sorry.
Requisition.
My brain, I was trying so hard not to say it, and I'm shutting up.
From RAF stocks. At the end of October, the SAS undertake their final exercise. They march 3 days and 4 nights through the desert before infiltrating an RAF base. There they put stickers saying "bomb" on the planes stationed at the aerodrome. The next morning, these stickers are discovered by perplexed guards. The SAS is ready to go. On November 16th, Operation Squatter begins. 5 detachments of 12-man parties, among the men Stirling and Lewis, are sent out to parachute near Axis airfields at Gazala and Tamimi. As the planes approach the Gulf of Bomba, however, they fly straight into a terrible storm. One plane goes missing straight away, and Stirling's party drops at a terrifying speed. All of them sustain injuries. Their equipment canisters are scattered to the winds, and the fuses to their explosives become damp. The first mission of the SAS is a disaster.
I thought the whole point of engineering around fuses is that they'll burn no matter what.
Half of the unit. First mission of the SAS is a disaster. Under half of the unit makes it back. 6 men die, and 28 are taken prisoner. At the end of November, Lewis and Stirling meet with their surviving officers. The only thing that has saved their reputation is that the remaining men managed to remain hidden and return from behind enemy lines without being intercepted. It demonstrates that the core concept is indeed solid. But this leads to a heated argument. What if they got rid of parachuting altogether? It is clearly the Achilles heel of the outfit. Parachuting depends on the weather and the aircraft available. Accuracy is poor, and the amount of explosives they can carry is really limited. Why not use a unit like the LRDG for insertion instead? Okay, fine. Motor transport is slower, but it is convenient and it is reliable. Stirling is reluctant. I mean, after all, the whole sales pitch for the SAS had been parachuting. Nonetheless, at the beginning of December, Stirling meets with Major Steele of the LRDG and they make a deal. The paras are to accompany the raiders on their missions against Sirte and El Akela in the coming weeks. While the LRDG does its thing, raiding and ambushing enemy trucks and supply dumps, the SAS is dropped off close to enemy aerodromes during the night. Just as they have trained, the paras begin infiltrating the installations without being spotted, sneaking past enemy sentries and patrols. Inside, they plant special incendiary bombs designed by Lewis himself on the parked aircraft. The bombs are called Lewis bombs and are a mix of diesel oil and plastic explosives, light enough to be carried around and triggered by pencil detonators set on a 20-minute timer. Then the men escape back into the desert before the explosions and the chaos. All groups return within a few weeks. They have destroyed 90 enemy planes without suffering any major
How do they not die or end up
casualties themselves.
That's crazy.
Auchinleck and High Command express high praise for the SAS. Stirling and Lewis once more meet with their officers to discuss their mission and its results. As expected, the element of surprise is their main ally. The meeting ends with the notion that they will soon set out with the LRDG again.
Guys, my main question is, why is this a World War I, World War II idea, or a 20th century idea? Couldn't sabotage of important carriages carrying goods and supply lines, or cannons in the Napoleonic Wars, couldn't this always have been a very valuable thing to have? Just people going in and sabotaging cannons or whatnot.
And parachuting is definitely out, at least for the foreseeable future. True to their motto, who dares wins, the flaming sword of the 1st SAS Regiment will continue its illustrious wartime career, raiding Axis installations in North Africa over the rest of the war. Although Lewis is killed already in a raid in Libya the last day of 1941, and Stirling is captured in January 1943, the SAS remains operational, and as we all know, the legends just grow from there. If you'd like to see that special we did about commandos a while back, you can click right here for that. And to get more specials like that, and more specials like this, and more everything, join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.
It's a great video. These are special kinds of men that I don't think there is a nurture aspect that can achieve men like this. You know, people say people are a product of nurture and nature. Well, you need a large nature aspect of just balls and the nurture to become a man like this. I don't have those balls. I have balls. Fantastic, brave men. Love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below. If you would subscribe, it's completely free. It would mean the world to me. It's up to you. And hopefully I'll see you guys next video. We'll keep learning. Bye, guys.